The Iranian-backed Islamist terrorists who run the Gaza Strip on Saturday fired thousands of rockets and infiltrated hundreds of gunmen into Israel. Rescuers say they have found more than 250 bodies at the site of an Israeli music festival that was attacked by Hamas militants in an unprecedented assault on Saturday. The Israeli military says at least 700 people have died in the attacks overall, more than 2,000 are injured, and a number of hostages are being held in Gaza. The retaliatory Israeli airstrikes have killed at least 400 people in Gaza Strip, with more than 2,500 wounded. But there is one more side of this entire issue. The latest Hamas attack has abruptly altered the picture of the Middle East diplomacy. During the main phase of the Arab Israeli conflict, Saudi Arabia supported the Arab League against Israel. The official Saudi policy towards the Israeli Palestinian conflict has been supported of the Palestinian Arabs. However, in recent years, extensive behind the scenes cooperation in the areas of diplomacy, intelligence, and security have taken place between Israel and Saudi. To understand the current diplomatic situation in the Middle East, today we are joined by foreign affairs expert Abhijit Iyer-Mitra.
Thank you, Sonam. Thank you for having me on.
Abhijit ji, the warming relations between the two sides, Saudi and Israel, are a direct result of the unofficial Arab-Israel alliance. At the same time, Saudi Arabia, which is the most powerful Sunni Muslim nation, its relationship with Palestine is changing. Now that the Israel wants to shrink the Palestinian conflict diplomatically, what is the current situation? What is the current status of diplomacy between these two countries?
So, the thing is, MBS has changed a lot, but there are certain things he can't change, right? Most young Saudis today, they are not conservatives like the previous generation, which is why he's been able to, women can now drive, they can walk around in shorts and things like that in Saudi Arabia. But there are limits to what he can do. Remember, his own predecessor, King Faisal. Well, I mean, Mohammed bin Salman isn't king yet, but he will become. He is the crown prince. King Faisal was killed by his own family man simply for opening women's schools. So this is a deeply conservative society. Now, MBS is a pragmatist. He doesn't care about, Palestine at all. In fact, if you look ever since the first Gulf War in 1991, when the Palestinians supported Saddam Hussein's invasion of Kuwait, the Gulf Arabs, they detest the Palestinian leadership, both Hamas and Fatah. And they have no time for the Palestinian cause. They see the leadership as corrupt, incompetent, dangerous, and not serving the interests of their own people. And they're quite right about it. The problem is they can't say that to their own people. Because remember, Al-Aqsa, or Jerusalem, the Dome of the Rock, is the third holiest place in Islam. So what ends up happening is MBS might not care, but he suspects a lot of his people care about it. So what has happened right now is it leading to a chilling of the relationship? Not at all, even though Saudi Arabia has put out a harsh statement.
Right.
In private, they have an extremely deep intelligence cooperation, which is the surest sign of trust. Countries share a lot of things, but it takes a lot of strategic trust to share intelligence. And the Saudis and the Israelis have a very, very deep intel sharing relationship, which will continue because it is extremely mutually beneficial to both of them. The public normalization will not continue. And obviously, the thing is that a lack of public normalization gives both party to, keep their options open. Kal agar kuch ho gaya, they can claim, oh, well, there was no intelligence cooperation. And, we were always on the side of the Palestinians. Or, Israel can say, oh, but we always knew the Saudis were terrorists, So it leaves a lot of room open for maneuvering later on. But that's the state of relations right now.
So Israel is pointing its fingers of accusation at Tehran for orchestrating the attacks by Hamas. Is it clear that Iran wants to make it impossible for Saudi Arabia to strike a deal with Israel while others in the region cannot afford mayhem in Gaza?
This has much more of an imprint of Qatar than Iran.
Okay.
Because let's think about this logically. For the elements of a crime to be made, you need to have the ability, you need to have the money, and you need to have the motive. Iran has two, but it doesn't have the third. Okay, which is the motive. Uh, the person with the biggest motive here is Qatar. Because remember, Iran, why do I say they don't have a motive? Iran may have a motive to scuttle the Saudi uh, uh, Israeli deal, but they would have used Hezbollah to do it. See, they're not going to use a Sunni organization. And you know how bitter, the ideological divide today between Shia and Sunni is so deep. The last thing they are going to do is use a Sunni organization to carry out their biggest, geopolitical gambit. Hezbollah is actually very upset. They're actually feeling left out. So Iran desperately wants to be involved. And Hamas, I think finally, because this was such a carefully coordinated operation, the reality is dawning on them of what Israel is now going to do. And they desperately want this conflict to spread. So they have claimed, Iranians also helped us. The entire Hamas leadership is based out of Qatar. It sits in Doha. They have embezzled. I can show you records which show that they've embezzled something like $3-4 billion. 10, 15 people embezzling $3-4 billion from a dirt poor country is obscene. And that's what they've done. They live lives of luxury. Their kids drive around in Rolls Royces and God knows what not in Qatar. The kids will never fight an Israeli soldier. The kids will never face a bomb. The kids will never face anything. They allow, the ordinary people. It's like what happens in Kashmir. Mirwais and Mehbooba and Omar Abdullah, ये कभी मरेंगे? इनके बच्चे कभी जाके पत्थर फेंकेंगे? नहीं. They leave that to all the ordinary people to do all the dying. So Qatar is absolutely petrified of this Israel-Saudi deal coming through. There was an urgency with Qatar. There was the ability in Qatar. There was the financial ability in Qatar. And Qatar had a much greater motive. And remember, Qatar is a Wahhabist country which has great influences. Saudi Arabia has usurped Wahhabism. A lot of the emerging disagreement between Qatar and the political disagreement between Qatar and Saudi Arabia has actually translated into almost like an ideological battle between the Saudis saying, Abdul Wahab and Salafism, and the Qataris saying, no, we are the actual Salafists. But they've absorbed a lot of the Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood's teachings on this, which, the Saudis consider absolutely dirty, filthy, and not true Islam. So, and remember, Hamas is an offshoot of the Muslim Brotherhood. So there is also the ideological compatibility between Qatar and Hamas.
So, how this attack will change the diplomatic situation of the entire Middle East?
No, I don't think the diplomatic situation is going to change. And, this is assuming there are no more curveballs. If some curveball happens, obviously things change. But as is, the assumption of the basis of every assumption is, that famous economic term, ceteris paribus, all other things remaining constant. So इसमें क्या होता है कि you have a basic case of UAE has actually come out in support of Israel pretty much. They've refused to equivocate. So what you're seeing now is relations they will not talk about relations, but the relations with Israel will continue.
Right.
The focus now is on Israel. What I'm trying to see is will the Israelis fall for the trap, because they have a lot of scores to settle with Iran. But Iran is not involved in this as far as I can tell. So will they fall for the trap, the rhetorical trap that both Iran and Hamas have set and go after Iran? Or will they do what is actually required? Because if they're serious about getting rid of Hamas, the key to destroying Hamas lies in Doha, not in Tehran. But those will be the friction points that I see, depending on if Israel wants public satisfaction, or if they want public satisfaction, they will go after Tehran. If they actually want the problem solved, they will go after Doha.
In the coming days or weeks, can it affect India diplomatically? If yes, then how?
Look, the only diplomatic impact, if you want to call it that, is India has broken ranks with the global south. The global south was equivocating. They'd always say, oh yeah, we condemn what happened in Israel, but you need to address the occupation and the root causes and all that crap. There was no equivocation in the Indian statement. It was very clear. This was, number one, this was terrorism. We stand by Israel. There was no mention of the Palestinians in that statement. Essentially, हमने Palestinian को छोड़ दिया है. We left them to their own devices. If you do things like this, it's on you. Don't expect any succor from us. So, this has been one diplomatic shift. The second diplomatic shift is I've seen some speculation that this will, it may affect our chances with a bid for a UN Security Council non-permanent seat. It won't. Because guess what? The Arab countries, none of the Arab countries in private are hostile to Israel. So public posturing, this won't even affect the negotiations for those seats at all, I personally feel.
Thank you, Abhijit ji, for joining us.
Thank you so much. Take care. See ya.